I rise to make my contribution to the Early Childhood Employment Powers Bill of 2024 that will amend the Education and Training Reform Act, which will provide the state with appropriate legislative powers to operate government-owned early learning centres in this state. I'd like to thank the member for the South West Coast for being positive in the beginning of her debate. It's great to hear that you will be getting a centre in 2026, and that's a good news story. I think we all agree that we need more, and that's why Labor is in fact building 50 more. So that's what this bill is about, and that's what we're doing. We're getting on and doing it. And it's not always easy. It's complicated and complex work, and that's why we need a bill and legislation to help us guide the way that we move forward on building the 50 extra centres. This bill will primarily make changes to the Act that will give powers to the Secretary of Department of Education to employ staff at government centres to deliver early childhood education, enable fees to be fixed and charged to parents, and allow the Minister to make orders regarding fees and employment conditions for the early learning centre workforce. Although the Secretary currently has powers that pertain to this, they aren't suitable for employing and setting out the conditions for early childhood employees. So this bill will establish a more modern power for the Secretary that better reflects what this government's early childhood reforms are trying to achieve. Acting Speaker, since I've begun my time in this place, I've talked on a number of bills that are for early childhood education. Indeed, the member for Preston said this is the third time we've spoken on early childhood education, which again shows Labor are putting the work in. I've been to kinders in my community and seen firsthand the wonderful kinder kits that they get at the start of each year, and I've heard absolutely brilliant stories from families that are not only benefiting but thriving with this government's reform to early childhood education. It's clear to me that this Labor government not only cares deeply about the future of our kids, but actually puts action behind it. It's very easy to just say some fancy lines or buzzwords about what is going to be done. It's harder to plan and implement these policies in an effective way. But that's what we've been doing, and that's what we will continue to do as we are now debating this bill. On reading this bill and writing this debate, I looked back on what was available to myself and my wife when we had our three daughters. Well, actually, it was more when we had our first two daughters, way back when. Back then, we were on a one-income family. Believe me, the wage of a professional ballet dancer was not very generous. And it was a bit of a struggle. As my girls are now 28, 32 and 34, I had to really strain to think back on what was available to them. In fact, I called them all so that they could remind me of what we did. And there was certainly nothing free, and there was certainly very, very little, if any, financial help. So on my one wage, we struggled to get my two girls into what was known as a sort of a daycare, childcare, kindergarten sort of setup. That was really important because part of having a young family, as we all know, it's not a ride in the park, and it can be very stressful. And having the ability to get my kids into kindergarten or preschool meant it gave my wife some time for her mental health and also to help with our relationship, because having kids is incredibly stressful. Having our kids, it was an important time for my girls. They loved being in kindergarten. Once they got over the crying at the morning handover, it was a great environment, and the staff were also incredibly warm, caring, patient and kind. And it was, as I said, it was also a much needed break for my wife's mental health. Some quiet time to have for us to be together, a break from the kids to reset, refresh and do the shopping without having to constantly say, no, you cannot have that. Does wonders for the soul. Unheard of. So in essence, we coped through that early time in our life, but actually I'm aware that we all have different experiences. So it's refreshing to know that Victorian families are better off under this government as we are making massive and needed changes to our early childhood education. And this bill will only continue to strengthen our commitments. So these changes are all part of the Best Life reforms, Best Start, Best Life reforms. But this bill in particular will help deliver over 50 new government-owned and operated early learning centres in areas that are most needed. However, we will also need the staff to fill these centres, and to make sure we have the workforce needed, we need to invest and create pathways to enable educators. And we're doing that work as well, besides what those on the other side might say. Part of the massive $14 billion investment we've made is to make sure we are upskilling people by providing support to 780 diploma qualified educators to become degree qualified teachers. We're providing support for more placement and mentoring experiences for 550 students, and allowing another 200 trainees to undertake paid traineeships in early childhood services whilst they complete their Certificate 3. Whilst we support the pipeline of workers coming through the system, we also are providing immediate support to current qualified teachers and educators through providing financial incentives up to $50,000 if they move to an area where it's been hard to find staff. If you're someone who has left the profession but still have eligibility, incentives up to $9,000 are available to rejoin the workforce. Once teachers have begun their education career, supporting them through their journey is just as important, as we don't want to be seeing burnout occurring so early on, because that would create more staff turnover. Free career development opportunities that include conferences for first-year teachers, coaching and mentoring support for teachers and returning educators, and establishing early years learning networks for teachers that have been recognised as leaders to share their professional expertise and, crucially, experiences, building off our commitment to include more people with lived experience to develop the future of the education workforce. Not only have we consulted and worked with early childhood teachers and educators, but also over 5,000 Victorian families to hear their input and what would work best for them, and listen to their feedback. Listen to their feedback, which is invaluable when making decisions as important as this. On top of listening to educators and families, we also need to have on board our service providers, peak bodies, unions, and our universities and TAFEs, so that everyone is on the same page and understand what we're trying to achieve, greatly improving how early childhood education is being done and building on the work that has already been started. Acting Speaker, this bill is just another part to revolutionise how we educate and the logistics of it all. There's talk, which is what the other side only does, and there's action, which is what this side does, because these centres will start to open from next year until 2028. And these bills and various amendments are all part of that important process. Now, the first few of these centres are being opened in 2025, and they will be exciting for those communities, starting with Eaglehawk North, where the Premier will be quite happy to see that one built. Then on to Fawkner, and I'm sure the member for Broadmeadows will be keen for that one. Then across to Sunshine for the next centre, where the amazing member for Laverton is eager to get it underway. And then finally, Acting Speaker, we have another being started up in Matoa, which should make the member for Lowan quite happy to see that provided for her community. And as I said, for the member for South West Coast, there will be one opening there in 2026, which is something to actually celebrate and not complain about. Yeah, I've done that bit. So, Acting Speaker, not only are there places in need that support, not only are there places that need that support most, but also co-locating these early learning centres with services like maternal and child health, parenting programs, community spaces, and having them next door to our schools, where possible, of course, to eliminate the hassle of a double or triple drop-off, just makes sense to me. And I'm sure it does to every other parent in this place. Less time in the car, more time in the learning environment. This is the start of 50 new childcare centres. This is the start of 50 new places that will educate and be a safe place for our children, and 50 new places that will be new career beginnings for some workers and revitalisation of carers for others. It's our educators, it's for our educators, it's for our parents, and most importantly, it's for the future of young Victorians. I'm glad to see that those on the opposite side support this bill. Unfortunately, I'm not happy to see the recent amendment, because they don't support this bill. I commend the bill to the House.